operate. If it's not the most efficient electrolyser, by the time you take into account the cost of electricity, replacement of equipment and maintenance, it may not be the cheapest electrolyser overall. So what we try and do is we try and help weight and score the different criteria depending on what the project requires, and therefore kind of take them to a shortlist. Because when you're approaching feed, it's better to have an understanding of what is the technology you want to take forward. So that when you're doing that for the detailed engineering, you're not trying to second guess what might be that pressure coming from this black box. Actually, you know this is the pressure of hydrogen I'm getting, therefore this is the compression I'll need, this is the storage we'll need. And yeah, that's the port of Rotterdam. Thank you.
Great, okay, so that concludes the presentations that we have lined up for the second half of the session. We ran through those relatively quickly so that we have a bit of time at the end just for a quick Q&A, but we are approaching the end of the overall session. But I think we've got a few minutes left for a few questions that might have occurred after the last set of presentations. So if there are any questions, we'll take them from the floor. We have one over there.
Thank you for the presentations. When you shared the slide on the export vectors, you had your liquid organic hydrogen carrier, and you had the concept that was similar to ammonia. My question is that when you looked at the LOCH or LOHC, what was it that you considered? Are you considering the toluene, the carrier itself being transported back and forth, or is it being sold as a secondary product going to the destination market? So what were your assumptions in that model for your export vectors?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think we can provide the white paper that graph was based on. It's obviously got all the details and assumptions within it. I think it was based on the assumption that you take the toluene back, but I have to confirm that with the white paper itself. But again, if you give me your contact details, we can provide more details on that.
I have an additional question. So you were comparing the different reforming technologies needed at the front end to power all of those, be it heat or electricity. How does your technology, so the SMR Plus, I believe, compare with conventional steam methane reformers without the carbon capture? So how much, in other words, how much additional natural gas would you require per ton of hydrogen when you compare conventional steam methane reformers with yours?
Yeah, that's not an easy question to answer, as I'm sure you know. So I don't have that answer at the front of my head, but I mean, yeah, I can't say too much about, because obviously what you've seen is the recycle in that process is pretty critical to the decarbonisation, because traditionally the amount of carbon that you could abate by putting pre-combustion carbon capture within that process, but then just firing methane into that reformer furnace will be limited. So that will be limited to something like 60%. So there has been a process change where we've recycled different materials from that separation train in the back. So it doesn't relate exactly to the same efficiency as a grey SMR does. That is true. But still, we're not really losing energy as such. And some of those technologies, like the gas heated reformer, really help actually in terms of we don't want to create steam and then use that for something else that we could have electrified, for example. So that definitely helps with the efficiency. But yes, I'd have to refer to one of the technology guys to give you a gas to gas efficiency between the two.
Thank you. And just a second question. Is this technology, this SMR Plus, can it be retrofitted in existing SMRs, or are we looking at a complete package where it would be say plants would want to, in Oman would want to shift from grey to blue, they would also have to replace the chronic steam-methane reformers.
Yeah, so yeah, I probably should have covered that, but yes, that is an opportunity as well. So a lot of that technology, including carbon capture, we can retrofit onto existing plant. Whereas I guess if you're moving technologies all together, then yeah, it's going to be more of an issue.
Yeah. And going back to the case study on the Humber Zero project, for example, that was one of the key drivers on the integration of blue hydrogen. It was the brownfield modifications and integration of the carbon capture technology to existing grey hydrogen production for a specific industry.
I want to take you just before the break where we talked about just different type of hydrogen, and I just feel like if the whole world just knew where to put their money in, probably like green hydrogen, then we will all focus on green hydrogen. But I know that's not the case because obviously like each country will have something else, like something specific to focus on. So my question is, where should Oman put their money in? What will make sense to Oman? And probably like how, like what are the factors, to make that decision? Is it the demand in Europe? We were talking about it in the break, or is it the resources, the supply chain? What is it exactly?
Yeah, and I think in general, I think Alistair slightly covered it earlier. We said that Oman obviously has very high gas resources and very high potential for renewable energy generation as well. So I think the two main global hydrogen production technologies.
Oman has what, sorry?
Sorry?
Oman has a lot of what, sorry?
Large renewable generation capacity, as well as. So I think if you're looking at the kind of the two main technologies in kind of blue and green hydrogen, then obviously there's some potential for blue hydrogen, but massive potential for green hydrogen. Anything to add to that?
I feel like it's risky business to advise Oman on its energy strategy.
Yeah. That's not government policy, just to clarify.
Yeah, here I am with me. As Stuart, I think Oman has great resources for renewable energy generation, and I think Oman would be well placed to use that as electricity, where electricity is needed and where you can electrify. I think that Oman would be well positioned for turning that electricity into hydrogen and using that hydrogen as part of the process. Oman already has experienced legacy in industrial processes in the country, and I think we're well positioned in that. And it also depends on what Oman wants to achieve. Is it about decarbonising energy in Oman, or is it about decarbonising the energy that your customers use around the world? So I think all of that is important, and I'm not going to say anymore because I don't know what to answer. Thanks for the question.
One last question. It's related to the desalination plants. So what do you think of the potential of having hydrogen as battery storage in combination with desalinated water? So for example, in a desalination plant, you have an optimal amount of specific power consumption at a certain capacity of the plant. So for example, 80% of the capacity. So what do you think of having a steady production while having the excess water converted into hydrogen and having that as a storage capacity? And what are the challenges for the existing desalination plants?
Just to make sure I understand the question, is it about trying to ensure that you have a consistent supply of electricity to ensure that the desalination plant runs at optimal efficiency?
Exactly.
Right, okay. Yeah, so this is a problem for not just for desalination, but for many different technologies that require consistent supply of electricity. At the moment, the energy markets have kind of cracked short-term storage. So lithium-ion batteries is a great way to achieve stability when an accounting firm, maybe you're generating off solar and you get cloud cover. But the long duration electricity storage is still really to be cracked. You have different options like flow batteries, copper, zinc, compressed air, hydrogen potentially as well. And those technologies are getting closer to being technically and commercially ready, but not necessarily rolled out at this point in time. I think what we see with the studies when you can combine renewables with grid power, that's when you typically get your best efficiencies. Then it means you can run your plant at its optimal efficiency, and you can get the lowest cost of whatever product is. Obviously, the downside there is if you have to use electricity from your grid, where's that electricity coming from? And Europe's done a great job of really decarbonising the grid, and I think with upscaling solar and interconnections here around,
Thank you.